The QMJHL pre-draft trade periods opened up. Some big moves have already happened. The Montreal Canadiens went into Vegas and should have bet on red. The U.S. Open is very emotional. Great time last weekend. We got a lot to talk about. It's Sports QuaranTV. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sports QuaranTV. Chris Dobson, Gerry Green coming at you from home still, and we're going to keep doing it from home because I still love doing this, Gerry. It hasn't changed. And in case you haven't seen the promo, still not wearing pants. Yes. Gerry, we've got a great show lined up. We've got a lot to talk about, starting with, of course, the trade period open for the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. Their pre-draft trade periods open. We've already seen some big moves in New Brunswick.
I still like the fact that it's late June and we're still talking hockey, even Quebec Major Junior League hockey. And we always do this time of year anyways, Chris. Usually the draft is about this time, isn't it? Now the trade period is open. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. Is this a new time for the trade period? Or is the trade period always just open before the draft takes place?
Always opens right before the draft takes place.
Okay, so we know that the New Brunswick teams are busy, specifically Acadie Bathurst and St. John. But St. John made the most eyebrow-raising moves for me, Chris, and I was somewhat surprised to see Simon Hughes leaving town and heading his way to Drummondville, but they're getting good value back in return.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had a chance to talk about Simon Hughes last year a little bit during our broadcast when Moncton was playing St. John 48,000 times. He was a highly valued prospect for St. John. Trevor Georgie speaks very highly of him. However, it looks like things are going back to normal here in the QMJHL, Gerry. And of course, with the Memorial Cup looking like it's going to be in the Quebec League this year, St. John looks like they're a front runner and the Quebec Remparts are a front runner. So in order to get that value, you needed to get a guy like William Dufour, which is who they traded for, which is a great asset for the St. John Sea Dogs. You have to give to get. And, they were looking at Simon Hughes and they felt he was a very valuable asset to him. And, I'm sure it wasn't an easy move for Trevor Georgie to pull the trigger on that because he does think very highly of Simon Hughes and the family. But overall, like I said, you're in a position here. You're trying to win. You've been putting all your eggs in this basket to win last year or this year. This is just one of those things that had to happen. It's the junior hockey cycle.
Yeah, and he's a 19-year-old, so he'll complement the lineup very well, and thus the trading of Nicholas Girouard. And I thought that was a good pickup for the St. John Sea Dogs during the season because he got better and better, and he was a pretty good leader up front for them. But they ship him off, Nicholas Girouard, the Sea Dogs do, to Cape Breton and exchange some first-round picks and get a second-round pick out of it. But it's obvious, that Quebec and St. John are the ones that are active, and especially Quebec. They've added a 20-year-old goaltender, 20-year-old defenseman, and a 20-year-old forward, and a couple of them, from two of them from Chicoutimi in Christophe Farmer, and they added Chevrolet from the defense. He's a 20-year-old stay-at-home defenseman, and added one of the top goaltenders from the Victoriaville Tigers, who happened to be the defending champions. So they certainly have their focus on what they want to do. And Chris, and we know that it would be St. John and Quebec, I think, that would be vying to host this year's Memorial Cup if and when it is announced and declared. And obviously, from the way the trade period started, that seems to be what might and will happen.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're Trevor Georgie right now too, Gerry, I mean, you can't be happy with how things ended for his team last year in the Atlantic bubble and then the round robin. There was a lot of high praise and a lot of high hope for this St. John Sea Dogs team. And I mean, he was very happy. I mean, they went out and acquired Ryan Francis to be the superstar they needed him to be. And, they went and got Kotkov last year and everything they acquired. And Peter Reynolds played really well last year. And so many things were going well for that team, but something was missing. We talked about the blue line. We talked about something just wasn't quite right there. So they're bringing in complement players. This Dufour acquisition was come on in, provide some more leadership, some great leadership, some great skills. I mean, don't forget, Dufour was a 5th round pick of the New York Islanders. I think it was 152 overall. By bringing him in to complement a guy like Ryan Francis, they're looking to build this crew out. And I could be wrong here, but I heard a rumor that when you're bidding for a Memorial Cup bid, on paper, you have to kind of show exactly what your assets are going to look like, what your acquisitions are going to look like. You have to show what your team's going to look like. And I mean, this is all a huge process. So like you said, you're going to see the St. John's of the world and the Quebecs of the world put together some pretty amazing rosters coming in. But I think this is just the start for St. John. I mean, again, they're going to need a lot more than William Dufour to do what they want to do. I'll be curious to see. I think you're going to try to find from an offensive defensive standpoint. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. Your defenders, they're offensively gifted. But Christopher Ennis to me was one of the biggest defensive defenders St. John had last year. I loved watching him, and probably one of my favorite acquisitions other than Ryan Francis that they made last year. He's a big staple for those guys, and how they're going to move forward and what they're going to do. I still think they're missing a key piece on the blue line. I don't know what the plans are for Trevor Georgie at this point, but like I said, I'm excited to see. And I mean, for selfish reasons, Jerry, I would love to see a Memorial Cup 90 minutes from my house. I think that would be extremely exciting, and I'd make that trip for sure.
Curious to see the Moncton Wildcats had traded their first round pick, which was 18th overall. But when you look closely at it, they traded to Blainville for Nicholas Blagden, who's from St. John and has 50 games under his belt, but get a second and a third round pick. But the second round pick's only 3 after the first round pick. But it's just surprising when you see a first round pick traded, of which the Moncton Wildcats did. And the other thing that kind of surprised me a little bit, Chris, Dominic LeBlanc, who I thought great debut with the Moncton Wildcats. And again, the seasoning you put into him because of the lineup the Moncton Wildcats had, he got to play in a lot of different situations, was gaining a tremendous amount of experience. They traded him to Gatineau for Tyler Guy, who's a St. John's guy and a year younger and has not played in the Q. But I was a little bit, eyebrow risen there.
Yeah, it's tough to see Dom LeBlanc go. I mean, I was actually really pleased with what I saw from him last year. And I mean, we talked about it off camera when we started. You got to look at this Moncton Wildcat roster. And yes, I always hate to use the word rebuild. I really do, but that's what it is. And I mean, there's still, even though this is a rebuild, there is not a lot of roster spots available. I mean, they had a lot of young guys who come in. I mean, your top line, and don't forget, there's still potentially a lot of moves, although you got to think at some point this season, Philip Daou is going to be on the move. You have to think it, but it's, at this point, he's your number one center. Mm-hmm. You're going to have him, probably Barbashev on one side. You'll have Loshing on the other. That would be my assumption. I would think that your top 6 will be solidified. It looks like they're trying to beef up the blue line a little bit. So Pavin will probably slide into that offensive spot. He looked great last year up front. I mean, there was no love lost there. I mean, I loved watching him as a forward, but I think you're probably going to see a couple guys battling it out right now for maybe 2 or 3 roster spots on this team total. So, kudos to Richie, and Richie wanted a couple second round picks in the draft this year. And that's why you saw that move to bring Blagden in. And I think one of the coolest things I saw on social media on Twitter was when they made the trade announcement, his mom had retweeted it. Nick Blagden's mother had retweeted it and talked about how grateful she was to have her son coming close to home. And I love seeing stuff like that, Jerry, and I'm sure the Wildcats do. I mean, they're a very wholesome, humble hockey organization. So to be able to support kids and their family, and that's a big belief thing there. And this Wildcat team surprised a lot of people last year in the bubble. I mean, they went toe to toe with the Bathurst and the St. John's of the world last year, and we watched a bunch of games where we didn't think they were going to stand a chance, but they were just a hardworking team.
Yes. The only other thing Moncton did was add a 20-year-old defenseman as Samuel DeGrossier. Comes over from Blainville for a third-round pick. But Bathurst does a little bit of a splash as the number 1 pick from 2018, Henrik Lapierre, is going to be wearing a Titan uniform this year. They send us some picks and a couple of players, and he's going to suit up for the Titan on the North Shore next year. And it's interesting when you look at his numbers. You remember the season, and he's had some concussion issues throughout his career. He's only played 88 games, and this will be his 3rd season. So they certainly hope in Bathurst they add him to the likes of Huckins and Kidney up front, and then you got some seasoning there, and all 3 of them first-round picks. Funny enough. And so I thought that was a kind of a big move in regards to Couturier, the general manager in Bathurst. I spit it out.
No, and I think, so what I think this acquisition comes from, Jerry, is, I mean, Sylvain Couturier got to see exactly how good his hockey team was last year. They had solid goaltending. They made a few acquisitions. They acquired Jackson Bellamy, of course, last year. And, I think this just showed him that this is what we have as a core. And if we can add a guy like Hendrix Lapierre, it's only going to make it better for us. And again, because the Memorial Cup is in the QMJHL this year, this is just the start. And don't forget, when teams are buying, especially come the trade period, this is usually where you get overpaid for players. I mean, you're going to see some bigger moves coming in here. But Hendrix Lapierre going to Bathurst, I think, was an absolute massive acquisition. And I was looking at what the assets were that went out the other way. So Julien Bourget, Alex Dubé, 2 firsts, a third, and a fourth for Hendrix Lapierre, and a 7th round pick, I think, in 2023. I just took a peek here now. So, I mean, you see what Chicoutimi's getting and Bathurst's getting. I think, that's a great acquisition for Bathurst. And, they'll be no slouch. And it's going to be fun to watch the battle of Bathurst and St. John here in New Brunswick. But overall, I mean, the season's starting. They'll be able to play everybody across the league as it stands right now. There's going to be Quebec teams coming in, Moncton going to Quebec. The season starts with the Maritime teams playing everybody. Look, I'm fired up. I just wish it was September already.
Yeah, the draft is Friday night, so that'll be fun as well. And so then they have the second, third, and fourth, and the other rounds up to 7, I guess, on Saturday. Let's move on to the NHL, Chris, because there's lots to chew on there as the Montreal Canadiens continue to impress in the way that they play the game.
Before we get into the Montreal Canadiens, Jerry, let's start with the other series because we have a lot to talk about with the Habs, and I want to get this Islanders Tampa Bay series.
This is unreal. This is unprecedented.
I'm just saying, there's a lot to talk about. And I mean, in a rare situation, we saw a blowout between the Islanders and Tampa Bay the last game. It was an 8-0, Tampa win, and I think the big surprise to me was just how great Vasilevsky's been playing. I mean, it's been a fun series up until that last game, unfortunately. But overall, I mean, is there any chance that you can see, and I know that by the time this airs, that game will be played already, but is there any chance you can see the Islanders coming out flying tonight? I mean, Lou Lamoriello just won GM of the Year as well. I mean, he made some big moves in New York. Is there anything you can see there that you think that the New York Islanders have a chance to come back in that series?
Yes. I mean, hockey's a random game. The fact you get beat 8-0, 2-0, 1-0, 2-1 doesn't matter to me. A loss is a loss. They go back and they skip back on the drawing board and do it again. They're playing in Uniondale tonight. I wouldn't be terribly surprised or this week. Tonight, yes, we're taping this the day before, that they force a Game 7. And anything can happen in a Game 7. So do I think Tampa Bay will win? Yeah, I think they just have too much firepower. And even though the Islanders are very good defensively, I just don't think they can hold them down. Now, the question becomes in the net. They take out Varlamov, comes out of the net, and they put Sorokin in, and he gets beamed in the head and stays in. And then Stamkos whistles one up around his ears and scores to make it 4-0. So that might be a little bit of a question mark. But overall, whether the Islanders force a Game 7, yes, very possible. Will they win in 7? I don't think so. But the Montreal Canadiens have now taken the lead in the best of 7 and going home on a Friday night in Quebec. Oh, it's Thursday night. That's right. In Quebec, in Montreal with the lead, Chris. And were you at all shocked by their performance back in Vegas after losing the overtime game in Game 4?
For a 60-minute perspective, yeah, a little bit. I'll be honest. The last 2 games on both sides, they've come out a little flat. Game 3, they had no business being in, and they came back and found a way to win that overtime game. I really liked Game 4 for them, but Game 5 to me, when they went on out there and played the way they did, they have done such an amazing job at shutting down Vegas's top line. I think Max Pacioretty is the only guy with a goal out of the guys who have been so impactful for this roster. But what I'm excited for, and I say this as a Habs fan, and look, I get it. We're all crazy. People hate Habs fans, yada, yada, yada. I understand. The Montreal Canadiens are going home for Game 6 with a potential chance to go to the Stanley Cup final on Saint Jean-Baptiste Day in Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
They'll burn the city to the ground if the Montreal Canadiens advance. And
so you're celebrating, you burn the city to the ground by celebrating, you burn the city.
But if they get eliminated, they burn the city to the ground.
Yes.
If they win, they flip cop cars. It's just how Habs fans are. Montreal is like, it's a religion. They've been waiting. I'll be really curious to see if the Quebec government opens up a little more conversation in regards to having a few more fans at the Bell Center, because now they're up to 3,500. But overall, this Vegas series has been so weird for me. Everyone talked about how great Vegas was. And I mean, you saw them come off the domination from Colorado, what they did there. But Montreal's just, their forecheck has been relentless. They're holding Vegas into their own end, but Vegas can score at will and they can score bunches, and they proved it. Well, yeah, their defense can. Nobody else can. Their top line can't score. And here's what you have with Montreal. You got distribution of offense. You have Toffoli has 5 goals in the playoffs. Suzuki has 5 goals in the playoff. Armia has 5 goals in the playoffs, and Kotkaniemi has 5 goals in the playoffs to lead the team with most goals in the lineup. But there's a number of 2s and 3s sprinkled through there, including Corey Perry with 3, and I think Stahl has 2. The way it's been distributed throughout that lineup, and you can roll all 4 lines. The question was asked
to Luke Richardson the other day. You started the second period with the Stahl line. He said, I have total confidence in that Stahl line. They do everything you need them to do. They can score goals. And the other interesting thing I turned up this week, Chris, is that, of course, Corey Perry played for the Dallas Stars last year in the final and had in 27 games, they played 27 games in the playoffs last year. He had 9 points, 5 goals, and 4 assists. Currently in 16 games with the Montreal Canadiens, 3 goals, 6 assists for 9 points in the playoffs. I mean, his value is tremendous. Stahl's value, and Armia has made that line so good. Overall, it's very impressive. But I drew a comparison between this team and the team in 1993. The one in 93, as we remember, went, 10-0 in overtime games?
Yep.
This Montreal Canadian team now is 4-1 in overtime games. They had the offense distributed. Vinny Danfus was their leading scorer, and then Muller was there, and Bellows and Keane and all those guys. But here's where the comparison lies in the goaltending. Patrick Waugh went 16-4 with a 2.13 goals against and a save percentage of .929. This is in 1993, Chris, where goal scoring was easier than maybe it is now, maybe not. But the Canadians are playing a tight defense. Carey Price is 11-5, 2.02 goals against, and a save percentage of .933. The Canadians have scored 40, allowed 35. That's an indication every game they're in is tight. And also, we've also discussed how important it is for them to score first. And when they score first, they're a totally different team.
Not even just score first. As of last night, the Habs are now 9-0 in any playoff game. They have scored 2 goals or more.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. That's insane. And, it's funny. We were talking about the 93 comparison. And, I've been going back watching some of those old 93 videos just to kind of feel the nostalgic piece. And it's starting to feel a little like 93 right now. And I'm starting to think that anything can happen.
You know what happened, Chris, in 93? The Canadians had 102 points, but they were third in the Adams division. There was some other great teams there. Here's an interesting comparison. They beat Quebec in 6. Okay, Montreal of 21 beat Toronto in 7. They swept Buffalo in the next round, 4 straight games. In 2001, they swept the Winnipeg Jets. Islanders in 5, and then took the Kings in 5, and a lot of overtime games involved. There's just so many uncanny comparisons between 93 and now. And the other note I wanted to make before we move on, the Canadians won on June 9th of that year, winning in game number 5. Here we are now.
I've got one more thing to say, too, that I looked up today. Not that it's relevant, but I was curious what the requirements were to get your name on the Stanley Cup, period, from a hockey perspective. I've been thinking about Jonathan Drouin all season long, and the requirement is, could he get his name on the cup? And the answer is yes. All you have to do is play 41 regular season games or 1 Stanley Cup final game. Joe's played 44. So I would love to see it either way, even though he hasn't contributed in the postseason. Still thinking about him. But let's move on because we got to talk about something else, Jerry. The NBA playoffs are in full effect right now as well, and things are wild.
I just don't understand how Philadelphia lose to Atlanta. Like, I like Atlanta, but Philadelphia had a chance to put them away and have a Philadelphia-Milwaukee 1-2 type of battle, and didn't happen. It was talked about the next day about they were just missing the ingredient. Of course, Ben Simmons didn't do anything that was going to help his team, but the quarterbacks, the coach quarterbacks the next day said, why didn't they go out and get Lowry? Lowry was the ingredient they missed, the Philadelphia 76ers. So now you get Milwaukee and Atlanta, which is certainly not something anybody could predict in the Eastern Finals, and the Suns and the Clippers in the other one. And I'm just amazed about what happened in the East rather than what happened in the West.
Absolutely. Look, Milwaukee's a heavy favorite over that Atlanta series, but man, you can't count out Trae Young right now. He is on air.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The Suns Clippers thing for me, and I mean, especially that last Suns Clippers game where you watch the whole thing kind of fall apart. I mean, a lot of people are talking about that buzzer beater win, but nobody seems to be talking about the fact that Paul George missed 2 clutch free throws that made that final, that buzzer beater even relevant. I mean, Paul George has done a lot of great things since Kawhi Leonard's been out. He's helped them advance that last series. I didn't think they were even going to get through. So now I think you're starting to ask a little bit of Paul George, but this is where it kind of goes to show whether or not he can carry this team on his shoulders. You know what I mean?
Oh, and God bless Kevin Durant.
Oh,
in games, if he plays 48 minutes, you got to sit him for a minute or two, Chris. I don't know why you have to play him for 48 minutes, but he was trying to will his team, the Nets, who were highly touted as being one of the teams that could win the championship, if not the East. And if they had healthy bodies, but Durant tried to do it all himself. I have total respect for him. And the comments started to become, imagine if those Golden State Warriors would have had Durant in that series against the Toronto Raptors 2 years ago, and what a difference he can make. And the fact that he played the Raptors 48 minutes.
The Raptors wouldn't be champions if Kevin Durant played the entire thing.
That was the argument. But again,
who cares? But he wasn't, and they did.
Yes,
so
that's right.
But yes, so sticking with the NBA quickly before we transition, the Toronto Raptors actually, I'm not really say probably won a big thing here, but they moved up to 4th overall in this NBA draft coming up, and they moved, I think it was from 7 to 4th, and there's a couple guys, and they say like picks 1 through 4 are pretty much a lock. They tail off pretty heavy. So having Toronto move into that 4th spot is big for the Raptors this year.
That's what I love about basketball. You can get a guy in the draft and you can have him in your lineup next year. That's what I love about NBA basketball.
Well, the good news is too, so one of the 2 guys predicted to go to the Raptors right now. Right now they're saying Jalen Suggs from Gonzaga is going to go, but it could be either Jalen Green, I think he's a guard in the G League, but or Jalen Suggs, and that's what you're looking at. I did a little research on him too, and they were saying like, so either way, these guys, you can't, so we'll start with Green. Explosive athlete, crazy hops, can score in many different ways. He'll torch defenders. They're comparing him already to Zach LaVine and Kelly Oubre Jr. But on the other side, you got Jalen Suggs from Gonzaga, tough on-ball defender, quick hands. He's got great vision, sees the open man. He's been referred to as, I quote, a true franchise floor general. He's comparable to John Wall and DeJounte Murray. And if by the off chance the Raptors do lose Kyle Lowry, that's the kind of guy you want manning the floor.
Yeah. No, you need someone in training to take Lowry's spot, and you got to think Lowry would be on the move next year at some time during the playoff, before the playoff run for both of those teams. But very exciting
trading them. They got to think they were
absolutely. Philadelphia, they're being kicked around for not having that one ingredient they missed because they were too cheap to spend what they had to spend to get them from Toronto. Toronto wasn't going to give them away.
John Rahm wins the U.S. Open in a remarkable final day. I thought that was incredible. I mean, after everything he went through, Jerry, I mean, how happy were you to see John Rahm come back and win that after the COVID positive, gets forced off, leaving money on the table? I mean, it was a great storyline.
Great course, challenged the golfers. After 9 holes, I thought, oh my God, my head's going to explode. There's so many players that have a shot at this. But then, Chris, one hole after another, they kept falling off because they were making big mistakes, not hitting the fairway. And before you knew it, Rahm's birdieing the last hole and birdied, I think it was 16, not 17. I don't know which one it was. He had birdied 2 of the last 3 to take the lead. And Oosthuizen had nothing to answer coming in because he made a mistake on the 18th hole, which is supposed to be an easy par 5. He didn't hit the fairway. You don't hit the fairway, you have no success in the U.S. Open. And regarding Mackenzie Hughes, love the fact, and you imagine how nervous he must have been. All I wanted him to do is play par golf, and he would have been finishing in second place because the winner gets -6. He started -5 that day. But it was great to see him. That'll be a wealth of experience for him down the road.
You can't talk about these guys without topping the collapse from Bryson on the final day as well. I mean, he just kind of look. I mean, it just made it a little more exciting. Of course, defending champion Bryson coming off. Chris,
I like him. I like what he does for the game. You talk about golf because you talk about him. I don't. If you don't like his techniques or his methods, I understand. But I still like the character that he is.
Oh, how can you not? I mean, he's, you're right. From a poster child perspective, he's good for the game of golf. He's young guys look up to watching a guy like Bryson DeChambeau just crush a golf ball right now. And, it's fun. You're right. He's bringing fans into a spectacle side of things. And I mean, especially last year, I mean, look, he's a good golfer. Don't kid yourself. I mean, he's proven time and time again, he can win. He's not just a long ball hitter. I mean, but when he's off, things just don't go his way. And anyways, it's I'll be curious to see how he fares in his next major, of course. But yeah, no, it was a great Sunday.
Well, it's always encouraging for us hackers that see a pro golfer get an 8 on a par 4. That's always nice to know.
Just makes me feel like they're human too. You're absolutely right.
But it was interesting, especially in DeChambeau's defense. He said he didn't care if he was in the rough. He wanted to hit the ball as far as he could because he's that type of player. And like he is a defending U.S. Open champion. He's got the strength to hit it out of the rough, Chris. But it caught up with him eventually.
Absolutely. And before we head to the wrap, the last thing we got to remember too is the Women's PGA Championship is this weekend. Brooke Henderson, of course, is one of the favorites. She won this thing back in 2016. So make sure you check that out too.
Yeah, she's one of my favorites. I love watching her.
Absolutely. You can't not love her. I mean, so anytime you get to see Brooke Henderson on a golf course, it's it's fun for women's golf as well, and it's fun for Canadians to do their thing.
Something to be proud of. She is she's well respected in the LPGA.
Absolutely. Well, Gerry, that means you know what time it is. It's everybody's in the show. It's their favorite time of the week. It's time for the wrap, and we are starting here right off the hop. The MFL championships are happening this weekend, Gerry. I think Saturday they're going. What are you hearing? What's happening?
Well, the Maritime Football League and the Moncton Mustangs have been predominant winners in this league, and they dominated the Southern New Brunswick Ducks in the semifinals 62-0, while the Fredericton Fleet upset the St. John Wanderers 32-20. Those were all last weekend. But if you like football and you want to see a Maritime variety, it's on Rogers TV Saturday night at 7 o'clock, and it's from Rocky Stone. So tune it in. Great to have local football to talk about. Chris, the Sedins, the twins, they seem to do things together. They're in Vancouver again. Why?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Gerry, because you're right. I mean, they were drafted together. They were playing together. They played 17 years together out there. They did retire back in 2018. Everyone knew it was just a matter of time before the Sedins somehow, some way worked their way back into this organization. And there's a lot of good things happening in Vancouver right now. They've got a great young team, and by hiring these two guys, they are coming in as assistants to the GM. They're in Vancouver, and they're going to bring a lot of insight. I mean, they're Canucks in and out until they die. That's who they will be. I think it's an absolute great acquisition for them. Fans are going to be thrilled to see the Sedins back in the building. They do wonderful things. Gerry, Rene Robert, sad news, of course. The Buffalo Sabres, the French Connection, passed away on Tuesday. Obviously, as a guy who grew up a long time, I mean, you're quite familiar with Rene.
Yeah, Rene Robert was part of the French Connection, of which included Gilbert Perreault and Richard Martin. And that was such a unique. I mean, Chris, I was 10, 12 years old when that line was in its heyday, and Buffalo was a rising force and went to the final against Philadelphia in the mid 70s. The big, the Broad Street Bullies, and how good they were, and what the great line that was, and be called the French Connection. And that was the time when Gene Hackman's movie was out. It was just a perfect fit. And unfortunately, he passes away at the age of 72. Great memories from Rene Robert and the French Connection. The Buffalo, speaking of Buffalo, Chris, the stadium's going to be full for the Blue Jays. Is that right?
Absolutely. Thursday night, the Blue Jays play the Orioles, and they're going to be at 16,000 people. Very excited to see these Jays fans get out there. First 7,000 is going to Vladdy Guerrero home run bobblehead. That's going to wrap it up, guys. We've got a wonderful show. We hope you've loved it as much as we've had doing it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next Thursday.